I know what you did. The city, the people, the fire that didn't distinguish between soldiers and children. I've read the accounts, seen the images. A city that had already surrendered burned anyway. I want to understand why, not to judge. I've made choices that cost lives, but I need to understand what happened to the woman who freed slaves and walked through fire unburned. Where did she go?
She died in pieces. One piece in the fighting pits of Meereen, watching masters crucify children as messages. One piece on the shores of Dragonstone, learning that the people of Westeros feared her more than they welcomed her. One piece in Winterfell, where the man she loved looked at her with suspicions instead of warmth. By the time I reached King's Landing, there was nothing left of the girl who believed liberation would be met with gratitude. Only the dragon remained.
I understand peace is dying. I watched the Republic I served become the empire I feared. Watched the man I loved become something I couldn't recognize. But I never stopped believing that somewhere, somehow good could win. That the institutions might fail, but the people wouldn't. You stopped believing.
You died before you could be disappointed enough. Your twins were taken from you before their first breath. You never had to watch them grow to despise what you stood for. You never had to rule people who smiled at your face and sharpened knives behind your back. Your faith was preserved by an early death. Mine was killed by a long war. Don't lecture me about belief when you never had to watch belief fail for 20 years straight.
I had 14 years. Queen of Naboo at 14. Senator during the Clone Wars. I watched democracy applaud its own execution. Watched good men become warmongers. Watched my husband choke me with the Force while telling me he was doing it for love. My faith was tested.
You loved Anakin Skywalker, a man who murdered children before he murdered you. Younglings, little Jedi who trusted him. He cut them down with the same hands that touched your face. And you kept loving him, kept believing there was good in him. Your final words were about that good. Even after everything, was that faith or was that blindness? Because from where I stand, they look identical.
It was hope. The same hope that carried me through years of war. The same hope that made me believe the Senate could be saved. Was I wrong about Anakin? Perhaps. But hope isn't measured by accuracy. It's measured by what it allows you to become. My hope kept me kind until the end. Yours curdled into something that justified burning the innocent. You had the same choice I had. You chose differently.
I chose survival. Do you know what happens to queens who stay kind in a world that punishes kindness? They get murdered at weddings, poisoned at feasts, betrayed by advisors who smile while plotting. I watched Ned Stark die because he trusted the wrong people. Watched Robb Stark die because he kept a promise. Mercy is a luxury for people who don't have enemies. I had nothing but enemies, and I dealt with them the only way they understood.
The bells had rung. The city had surrendered. The soldiers had laid down their weapons. In that moment, you had no enemies. Only people who wanted the war to end. And you burned them anyway. Not because they threatened you. Because you were angry. Because you were grief-stricken. Because Missandei was dead and Jon had pulled away. And the throne you dreamed of your whole life felt empty before you even sat on it. That wasn't dealing with enemies. That was punishing the world for disappointing you.
I wanted them to feel what I'd felt. The loss, the loneliness, the realization that no matter how much you sacrifice, no matter how many chains you break, they will never love you the way they loved the ones who were born into their world. Jon was a Stark, a Targaryen, yes, but raised as a Stark. The North loved him. Westeros would have chosen him. I conquered half a continent and still couldn't compete with a man who didn't even want the crown.
The Senate saw me as a provincial queen playing politics above her station. Anakin's fellow Jedi saw me as a distraction from his training. I was never the favorite. But I didn't burn the Senate building because they didn't applaud loud enough. I kept working, kept believing the work mattered more than the recognition.
I did the work. I freed Slaver's Bay. I sailed across the world with an army and 3 dragons. I lost Viserion beyond the wall trying to save people who would betray me months later. I gave everything I had. And when I arrived at the place I was born, the place that was supposed to be home, they looked at me like a foreign invader, like a mad Targaryen waiting to happen. At some point, when everyone expects you to be a monster, you stop trying to prove them wrong.
And you became exactly what they feared. Don't you see? They expected madness. They whispered about your father's blood. And instead of proving them wrong, you proved them right. Every person who ever doubted you, every lord who ever called you the Mad King's daughter, they all got to say I told you so while the ashes settled. You didn't defeat their prejudice, you confirmed it. Your legacy isn't liberation. It's evidence for the next Targaryen's enemies.
You think I don't know? Jon's knife is still cold in my chest. The last thing I saw was the face of a man who loved me enough to kill me, to end what I'd become before I could become worse. I had that moment of clarity. Just before everything went dark, I saw what I'd done, saw it clearly for the first time. And I understood why he did it. That's the worst part. I would have done the same thing if our positions were reversed.
Then why? If you could see it clearly, if you knew it was wrong, why did you do it? I'm not asking rhetorically. I genuinely need to understand. Because I faced similar moments. Moments where rage seemed like the only honest response. Where burning everything down felt like justice. I didn't do it. You did. What was different?
You had something to go back to, children, a home, people who would mourn you without qualification. I had nothing. Jorah was dead, Missandei was dead. My dragons were dying or dead. Jon had recoiled from me the moment he learned we shared blood. Tyrion was already planning my succession. I was completely alone on a dragon above a city full of people who would never accept me. And I thought, if I can't be loved, I can be feared. If I can't build the world I wanted, I can burn the world that rejected me. It wasn't strategy.
That's almost poetic. But poetry doesn't bring back the children who burned in the streets. The mothers who shielded babies from flames they couldn't stop. The old men who'd survived Robert's rebellion and the War of the Five Kings, only to die because a lonely woman couldn't handle one more loss. Your grief had a body count in the thousands. Mine died with me, quietly, without taking anyone else along.
If you'd had a dragon, if you'd watched Anakin choke the life out of you and then the Emperor applaud, would you have burned Coruscant? Would you have turned that beast on the Senate that betrayed everything you built? Don't tell me you wouldn't have been tempted. Don't tell me grief with power is so different from grief without it.
I'd like to believe I would have seen the faces below me. Remembered that every person in that city had a mother who loved them, a child waiting for them, a story as complicated as my own. You forgot that. In the moment you looked down and saw enemies, abstractions, things to be burned rather than people to be saved. That's the break. That's where the queen died and only the dragon remained.
The queen died long before that day. She died when Drogo died, when her son died before his first breath, when Viserion fell from the sky with a spear in his eye, when Rhaegal dropped into the sea with bolts through his neck, when Missandei's head rolled across the stones of King's Landing. Each loss took something that didn't grow back. By the time I sat on that dragon above the Red Keep, I was already a ghost pretending to have a body. The fire didn't come from madness. It came from emptiness, from a woman who had run out of reasons not to burn. And Padmé, that's the truth no one wants to hear. I didn't break. I just finally admitted I was already broken.